one under the TR Triple V3 star sign. Today we take a look at the venture capital cycle of insanity, quote unquote, brought to you by Upper Echelon and this cat.
This video is brought to you by Ground News. Stick around to hear more about the special offer they're providing to the entire Upper Echelon community. Alright, it's not
Been pretty good about that sponsor, although I'll throw out that there could always be blind spots, but it is a good approach. It's a start. I like that.
really the definition of insanity, and Albert Einstein wasn't even the one who actually said it. But how many people watching this have heard the phrase, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result? Yes? Anyone? Assuming that you have heard that phrase, even if you haven't, today's video is a perfect demonstration of the concept because today we're looking at the cycle of insanity when it comes to venture capital using three separate examples: crypto, video games, and artificial intelligence. Now, of course, some people will be wondering, and rightly so, what is the cycle? And the short answer to that is throwing billions of dollars into a heap and metaphorically setting it on fire because you're greedy. But the long answer is quite a bit more nuanced and requires in-depth examples, so let's get started.
So, first thing I'm thinking of is Uber. Uber is a business model that works because in some regions it drove the competition away, and now they got a monopoly, and now they can charge. That's a business model. Not a great one. I think we should probably work on that. Anyway.
First up is crypto, and this is the part where we demonstrate the cycle as clearly as we possibly can. This right here is a list of all venture capital deals occurring in the entire crypto industry from 2014 to 2024. Alameda Research, the bankrupt hedge fund of FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried, appears over 100 separate times on this list as an investor, 15 of which come back as lead investor, dumping money into crypto projects all
why do investors jump on these?
over the world. Well, if we visualize these numbers, the picture of what's actually happening
I still don't know what is the problem that crypto is trying to solve. Does anyone have a problem of the records getting lost? I mean, besides that one time that something like that happened like in Australia or something. Hey, maybe it's gonna help for election integrity, but, you know, where's the money in that?
becomes rather clear. Nobody cared at all up until 2017, at which point everyone cared from a venture capital perspective, throwing as much money at the wall as they possibly could, hoping it would stick. And then when the hype died down, nobody cared again. It's not about the technology, and it's not about the practical value or utility for these people. If it were, there would be significant investing during off periods as well, probably more so, and not just desperately latching onto a retail speculation wave. But later down the line, in 2021 and early during 2022, the hype cycle came back, the prices went up, the speculation bubble revamped itself, and suddenly, here we go again as the venture capital comes flooding back into the industry. It's not a coincidence that these two hype cycles of this is the future, we have to throw as much money as we possibly can at the entire industry, happened precisely during the two all-time high price movements of Bitcoin. It's a rudimentary example, to be sure, but
to go back to the Uber example, you don't necessarily know what is gonna be the business model. And maybe only when you actually have a market cornered can you actually add some new value. Like, look at the big internet platforms, they definitely provide all kinds of value, even though the value came from everyone being on the same platform, right? So it's like, it's complicated.
the cycle here is plain as day. Something is perceived to be popular, aka throw as much money as you possibly can
But sure, in this case, it's pretty obvious what's going on here.
at it. But that kind of mentality doesn't typically work out very well. Remember, Alameda Research was leading a lot of these funding rounds and participating in over 100 of them.
But you never know.
But Alameda Research was just a money funnel attached to FTX, and FTX was a multi-billion-dollar fraud run by Sam Bankman-Fried. It gets better, though, because FTX itself also received large amounts of venture capital through investments, sparking questions.
It is hella sus that there's a million different cryptocurrencies. So, like, what am I gonna go on everyone or what? I don't understand, right? Like, what's the point?
From the SEC directly about how the hell it would be possible that no one conducted proper due diligence before throwing billions of dollars into a wood chipper. Three Arrows Capital, another crypto hedge fund that went bankrupt specifically as a result of this cycle, participated in 31 of these funding rounds, often directly alongside Alameda Research. But for Bankman-Fried, at least he actually got a 25-year prison sentence, which segues perfectly into today's video sponsor, Ground News. I vetted Ground News personally for over 6 months before I actually agreed to work with them, and I use the service for one reason in particular, and that's comparison. Contemporary breaking news is widespread, to say the very least, but Ground News gathers it all in one place with a clear system of marking bias, corporate ownership, and distribution of coverage. For this example, Bankman-Fried's prison sentence, that is, they've gathered 402 different articles where you can see that 30% lean left, 21% right, and 49% center. You can compare headlines, find discrepancies, and make your own determinations on what to believe or when, because Ground News is a subscriber-supported service that is primarily data-driven, so that users can be the ones to think critically about what it is they read and not have someone telling them. Ground News helps cut through biased reporting, especially. They don't tell you what to think, as I just said, and they provide the necessary...
When I see higher factuality button, I feel like you already got the finger on the scale here one way or another. You know what I mean? Too many orthodoxies in the world. But it's good that these guys are in the space, and I would definitely recommend people check them out as well, and maybe sign up. But anyway, I'd also recommend people listen to the experts. If you want to go beyond the orthodoxies of the world, plenty of experts all over the place.
Tools to help you navigate information better in a modern digital...
People who put in the work, look at the empirical evidence from different perspectives on different levels of analysis. You can't always figure out everything from the lowest level. No, you gotta also do the chemistry, not just the physics, right? So you gotta look at the macroeconomy, not just individuals. You know what I mean?
Environment, which is a very valuable tool. I've also thoroughly vetted the different bias rating services that they use in order to categorize the articles, making me confident when I recommend them since I use the service myself while researching videos. If you click the link down below in the description to sign up, you'll get 40% off the Vantage plan. Again,
yeah, this seems like very, very useful for a specific use case.
Link down below in the description, ground.news/echelon for 40% off a Vantage plan today. Big thank you to Ground News for sponsoring the channel and for being a research tool that's used in the making of this video. All right, we talked about crypto, but what's next? Next is esports, and having showcased the outline of what is happening, generally speaking.
Oh yeah, esports. I do recall this just kept coming up and then crash and burn and coming up, and I don't know, man. I mean, League of Legends, I used to play that. I was never into the competitive stuff too much, but I did watch some matches, and hey, Faker the Legend seems good. And yeah, then suddenly team valuations were crazy, or like slots for the NA circuit, and it's like that didn't go so well, but hey, they're still making money, right? I mean, the company, Riot Games, that is.
This time I want to dig deeper on a specific example, that example being FaZe Clan, and look at how it's actually happening. High level first, esports is once again a perfect showcase of the pattern we just described. Excitement leads to hype, leads to venture capital paying attention, leads to oopsie, sorry, we lost everybody's money, never mind, let's move on to something else and throw money at that.
DraftKings is doing well though, right? DraftKings, sell gambling to underage people, is doing pretty darn well, right?
But aside from the actual criminal fraud cases like FTX, you'd be...
Which again, maybe that shouldn't be a thing, but you know what I mean.
Very hard pressed to find a better example than FaZe Clan when it comes to just setting money on fire. See, FaZe Clan was basically the esports darling child. They raised over $40 million in multiple funding rounds, eventually going public via SPAC.
I don't know who these people are. Did they have a League of Legends team? What?
Merger with an expected value.
When did they have a League of Legends team? I mean, I haven't played League for like a year, but when did they like join League? I don't know. Like, League is one of the most important esports spaces, right?
Valuation of over $1 billion. And when the ticker finally went live after the IPO, the company was valued at $725 million. But that's about as far as they got before it all came crashing down. In less than 1 year, they had lost over 97% of their stock value, eventually receiving a notice that they would be delisted from the NASDAQ if they didn't get the share price above $1 for 10 consecutive days. Spoiler alert, they couldn't do that. And shortly before the company would have been removed from the index anyway, a company called GameSquare acquired them, full scale, delisting the ticker completely, for the paltry sum of $15.75 million. A company that had raised $40 million from venture capital and IPO'd with a market cap of $725 million over the span of less than 2 years had devalued itself to a share price of 18 pennies and been bought out completely for less than half of what they raised in venture capital alone. Now, you might be wondering, how is it even possible to fail that badly? And setting aside things like the $30 million party mansion that they have, or the PPP loans that they took during COVID that were supposed to be meant for small businesses, it's pretty straightforward to see that the company had
How does that even work? Do you really think that's what they were meant to be for, just because somebody said so?
no future and did not deserve to be the subject of venture capital delusion if you dig a little bit deeper. One of their members, named FaZe Rain, after a heated exchange on social media, but the details
CSGO. Fair enough.
of that aren't really important, decided to reveal esports revenue stats for basically the whole company, which one might think would be part of the discussion when major investors come on board. And the numbers he disclosed are staggering in a bad way. I won't go over all of them right now, but from just 9 of their esports teams collectively, FaZe was losing $750,000 per month. That's not even
I don't see League of Legends in here. Bad sign.
close to their total losses, by the way. That's just from these particular esports teams. But when you have a pro team of Valorant gamers that are dragging your company red by over 200 grand per month, yeah, at a certain point, the idea of venture capital funding is indistinguishable from the process of pouring gasoline all over a pile of your money and setting it on fire.
Don't get me wrong, this seems pretty bad. Yeah, but you know how big of a deal real sports is? It's a great business model, and I see some potential there. So I just feel like they aren't bridging the gap just yet. So there is something there worth trying to go for, but like this one clearly wasn't it.
However, none of it compares to what comes next, not even close, because the cycle of hype leads to FOMO, leads to venture capital jumping in, leading to massive losses, is getting ready to happen yet again, bigger than ever before.
And hey, sometimes you really do just need to throw money at something when the time is right. You promise you don't know when that is.
With artificial intelligence. Crypto showed us what happens, plain as day, just visualized on a graph easily. Esports showed us how it happens, to a degree with a particular example. So let's use that and look forward at what the future might hold. First thing right off the bat here is that AI historically already sits very high on the list of venture capital targets, and it's been growing in that way for many years.
There's definitely hype going on. People with the AGI, like, I don't think we have AGI in 100 years, but that could be part of the hype. Other part could be like maybe you think you can corner a market with this, but I don't think you really can. You can run a lot of stuff on a consumer hardware sort of setup, so it's like I feel like there's something missing there, but if you sell a premium service, I think you can still make a lot of money. In fact, there's been this stuff with the girlfriend experience, people spending way too much money on that stuff, AI girlfriend experience. So, you know, maybe there's a market there, but you always have that extra component of the hype, right? So there's gonna be overshooting in terms of just how much you can do with this, unless you really hit the holy grail of AGI and whatnot, which I don't think is on the table. So,
according to reports from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, venture capital targeting AI has grown from $3 billion in 2012 to $75 billion annually in 2020.
But hey, there is a product, right? At least there's a product there.
For the sake of comparison, just to put these things in perspective, crypto, the entire crypto industry that is, in the past 10 years total, has only processed roughly $100 billion of venture capital deals, which demonstrates the scope of what we're talking about for AI when we understand that 2020 wasn't even the relative peak for this industry. Interestingly enough, 2023 wasn't the peak either.
Yeah, but there's like no product in crypto, so it's never gonna make sense to compare to crypto, right?
Despite massively growing public awareness, because
it isn't the US military budget like $1 trillion per year. So,
in 2023, the annual venture capital deals fell to around 50 billion, where 10 billion of that total was given exclusively to OpenAI. But therein lies the problem. See, the relative proportion of all venture capital being invested directly into artificial intelligence is actually rising. According to Crunchbase data, over 20% of the entire venture capital market was being devoted to AI-related startups in February of 2024, which is significantly higher now, by the way, than it ever was previously. Meanwhile, OpenAI is losing a ridiculous amount of money. $500 million per year was being spent during the development stage of ChatGPT by itself. And now some reports allege upwards of $700,000 per day being lost in order to run the service, while total user base is actually falling and the company struggles to monetize.
Yeah, but how are you gonna monetize this? That's an open question. I don't really think that's a good answer. I see a lot of applications for this. You know, this thing is gonna deliver value, and if you can't monetize it, well, as long as somebody pays the bill, maybe somebody wants to keep paying for it, and maybe, you know, I don't know, a lot of money is going around in the West for things, even if they aren't gonna necessarily be monetized. So I don't know. I mean, how do we start the internet? It's gonna be had by other countries, and their economies will be better for it. It's like infrastructure, right? Like you don't complain about people spending money on building roads, right? Like government money, right? Like, and venture capital firms, they're like, in a weird roundabout way, that's kind of that's part of how the US funds some of its infrastructure.
But none of that really matters, actually, because if you can capture the venture capital hype cycle, and that's precisely what Sam Altman is trying to do, Sam Altman being one of the original funders of OpenAI, as well as the unshakable CEO of the company.
Maybe he got other reasons. Like, he's actually building a product that is going to deliver tremendous value and already is doing so. You cannot underrate just how much value you actually get out of AI. And I don't mean monetary value. Again, you can run this stuff on consumer hardware. So how are you going to monetize it? I don't know. But the value is there.
But he was briefly ousted by what seemed to be a failed coup by the board of directors before coming back with a vengeance. If you can...
Again, I don't know the game plan. I don't know how long this is going to get funded, this, that, or another way. But again, it's a good thing this is being funded.
Capture the hype cycle, well, all bets are off. The entire world is your oyster. This is where it gets crazy, at least in my opinion, and where the whole pay no attention to the man behind the curtain concept becomes completely absurd. Here's
fair point.
Sam Altman speaking for...
But I don't know, he understands which man behind the curtain he's talking about. I don't think Sam Altman is the man behind the curtain or whatever. I mean, who's the man behind the curtain here? But besides people who have an interest in actually having this new type of infrastructure be readily deployed in the West, which, you know, is a good thing, actually. So
years ago at an event called Strictly VC.
You know, the honest answer is we have no idea. We have never made any revenue. We have no current plans to make revenue. We have no idea how we may one day generate revenue. We have made a soft promise to investors that once we've built this sort of generally intelligent system.
No, don't say that word. Yeah, there is some hype going on here with the AGI. It's just like these systems don't understand irony. They don't understand. They can reproduce it in like in a fun way, like in a like conversational way, because it's a way people tend to communicate sometimes. But it's like, if you give it a piece of text and tell it, okay, what's ironic and what isn't, it would be like, it probably couldn't do it very well. This is something I've seen when I tried to get Google's thing summarize something for me. The AI was quick to be like, this guy is like very rude, this very rude guy. When he was just joking around. This is like normal human communication.
Basically, we will ask it to figure out a way to generate an investment return for you. It sounds like an episode of Silicon Valley. It really does. I get it. You can laugh. It's all right. But it is what I actually believe is going to happen. Like, you know, there's that joke that I actually think is very funny, which is like, step one is do this thing, step two is do this thing, question mark, question mark, question mark, profit. But like, you know, I think if AGI is on the table, that's actually okay.
That is just frankly insane to me.
It's a good point, though, but AGI is not on the table.
Invent something and then ask it how to turn a profit, which somehow justifies companies awarding tens of billions of dollars to that pursuit.
Also, again, look at Uber. Look at DraftKings. These are solutions to a problem when it comes to making money, right? The problem is there's laws that protect people, and there's solutions, which is we bypass the laws, so we make money, right? So, and you can't just be like, oh, we were trying to break the law, so we do this. So it's like, no. So anyway, I'm not saying these are good business models they got over there, but on the flip side, sometimes you get something where there's no business model, but there is a lot of good value, which I think with AI is the case. So,
because question mark. But with that in mind, turn your attention to this. Sam Altman seeks trillions of dollars with a T, trillions with a T, to reshape the business of chips and AI. OpenAI chief pursues investors, including the UAE, United Arab Emirates, for a project possibly requiring up to $7 trillion, end quote. $7 trillion. That is unbelievable. But for anyone who doesn't quite comprehend the scale of that number, and you'd be forgiven for...
That's pretty big. It's like 7 years of US military budget.
Not really comprehending that. Let me put it this way.
But hey, if you look at Intel, AMD, NVIDIA, and so on, it takes forever to develop a new, like from scratch, new design for your chip, right?
The entire GDP, gross domestic product, of the human race on planet Earth right now is roughly $100 trillion. Sam Altman is seeking what amounts to roughly 7% of that total as funding for his new AI venture, demonstrating the largest iteration of the venture capital insanity cycle that we've ever seen before. I'll go one step further here. GDP...
That's not that crazy when you realize just how much money governments used to spend on like doing important things, like going to the moon and whatnot, and how much the GDP of the world was concentrated in the West. You know, we were all going to the moon, right? So it's like, that was a lot of money, and 7% of global GDP, I mean, it isn't actually that crazy.
P is a commonly referenced data point on economic strength a lot of the time, but it may be kind of hard to put the comparison in perspective with that number. Try this one on for size. Credit Suisse estimates a...
I feel like if there's a society, global-wide appetite for something like this, it could be justified. I mean, you look at the military spending, right? I mean, they don't even have that appetite in the society. The US military, right? It's like, yeah, they spent that in 10 years, right? It's like, so what's so crazy about spending 7 trillion over a decade or two on this, right?
A global wealth...
I just don't like that it's not gonna be. It's just Sam Altman-Fried's proposal and deal with it. But, you know, if it was more widely agreed upon and arrived at through a process that makes sense, I mean, it could be good.
Total of 400...
Dream big.
154 trillion in 2022, at least. That means the added value of all products, currency, assets, and accumulated wealth on a household level across the entire planet, which therefore means that Sam Altman is requesting the equivalent of over 1.5% of the entire human race's personal accumulated capital for his next VC initiative.
Accumulated capital is funny, though, because you're going to spend this money, so it's going to be somebody else's accumulated capital, right? It's going to flow to the people you're going to employ and all, right? So you don't lose the capital. He just wants to wield it, right? So don't worry about this stuff just being lost or something silly, but no. It's the question is, okay, why Sam Altman-Fried and why this project in the way he imagines it, right? I see a lot of value with the AI, but man, it's complicated.
That is like bonkers level insane, cuckoo bananas, down the rabbit hole Alice in Wonderland, what the fuck is happening? The venture capital cycle of insanity, under the not technically precise definition that wasn't even really ever stated by Albert Einstein, is the cycle of investors giving money over and over and over again to projects that will never and could never pay them back, expecting different results each time because this one's going to be different. This time I'm going to get rich. We saw it with crypto multiple times.
But they don't have a product.
More than multiple. It's the entire crypto industry.
We're talking about more infrastructure. And if the US and Sam Altman-Fried or somebody more democratically legitimized isn't going to do it, you know, the global competition doesn't sleep. And if they have the infrastructure and the West is sleeping on this, well, there's a real downside. There's a logic to having infrastructure.
We saw.
So, a little sus he's putting this together with crypto, out of all things.
With esports very clearly showcased, and I don't understand how anyone could have ever looked at the FaZe financials and said, yeah, let me throw money at this group of kids. And we're seeing the largest iteration of it yet by far playing out in real time, once again, as the industry fails to self-regulate or temper their expectations in the slightest, rushing forward to throw money at things that have almost no reasonable chance of ever returning that value. They do the same thing.
They could return it as here's a technical term, positive externality. That's what infrastructure does. Gives you those positive externalities. So I'm not saying they will never make the money back, but I tend to err on the side of thinking this is gonna be positive externality land. And so do I like it that he's potentially like ripping off people who actually want returns on their investment? I mean, I don't like it.
Over and over, expecting a different result, aka the not so Albert Einstein definition of insanity. I don't know what will come of it this time in particular, but as the cycle gets bigger, so do the consequences, and this is the biggest version of the cycle we've ever seen. Anyway, that's it. If you want to support the channel, there are links down below. The video sponsor, Ground News, of course, a VPN affiliate, locals.
Alrighty. Well, that was pretty interesting, and there's never a lack of money to bail out the economy if all that's missing is a lack of money, by the way. So yeah, it seems scary, like, oh, 7 trillion, like, ooh, it's like, okay, and what if it crashes and people are gonna not get paid and it's gonna be a downturn? And if it's just a lack of money, you can always make that whole through the government. That's how that works. Government is the monopoly issuer of money, be it through its subsidiaries, the private banks. They have a banking charter, you know, that's what makes them subsidiaries of the government. Interesting video. Hope you enjoyed it. I did. And do leave your thoughts below in the comments. Rate. And think about sharing it too. If there's somebody you want to have a discussion with, you want to share it with potentially. At least have a hypothetical thought experiment as to, is there something worth discussing in this? Anyway, hope you stay safe and I hope we meet again. Meow. Have a good one.